everyone to the next shift. My name is Jorge Luis Ortiz Garcia. This is a really special episode, but before I go into that, I want to say that anything we say in this podcast is our opinion and not the opinion or ideas of Far West or Wingstop or any of our investors or associates. This is just our opinion. Again, this is an incredibly special episode because I get to record it with my two boys, Jorge and Luis. Yes, they're named after me. Sorry, that's the Mexican macho speaking. But really special to be able to talk to my sons about restaurants and the things that I have a passion for. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode, since it was done very unscripted too, by the way. I know some people might think that there was script, but nope, this is just us talking, and it's really cool to have this opportunity. So I hope you guys enjoy it. And welcome back to our podcast. Welcome to the next shift, moving up in the restaurant industry.
My name is Jorge Ortiz. Some people call me George David. I don't really like it. Do you mind introducing yourself, sir?
My name is Jorge Ortiz. I am currently CEO of a large franchise business. I cannot disclose the name. I know some of you guys will know. I started here 20 years ago, and when I joined this company, we had one restaurant. You know, we're up to 154 restaurants in this 20-year span. So it's been an incredible ride. Kind of that's the purpose of this podcast, is I want to make sure that as we dig in the next hour, kind of explaining my history and where I came from, I also want that because I want people to kind of understand and learn from some of the things that I've made mistakes, and I want them for this information to be useful to them. So yeah, but I'll talk a little bit more about myself today. And hopefully you guys don't think I talk too much about myself. Just the purpose of that is to kind of give you all kind of the insight of where I came from.
Okay, perfect. And sorry, guys, I didn't introduce the topic, but it's climbing the corporate ladder. So I don't know if you wanted to talk about a little bit how you got into the restaurant business, just so that people kind of understand the climb up the corporate ladder.
Yeah. You know, one of the things about restaurants is I love the fact that it's incredibly easy to join restaurants. Like if you go and drive around your area, your city, your town, you'll see that most restaurants are always hiring. And I would say that there's a crazy stat of how many people actually in the U.S. have worked, for example, for McDonald's. Restaurants are very generous when it comes to allowing you to grow into entry management positions. And that's one of the things I love about restaurants, and I think I'm not an exception of that. I think that, you know, the restaurant industry had opened so many doors for me, and I am so grateful. But with all that being said, I think that there is a different level of management that goes from being restaurant manager to maybe being a multi-unit manager. That's a little bit harder to achieve, and then making another jump from there to becoming a director or a VP, it is incredibly harder to do, and you need good mentors, you need a good platform, you need the right company, and more importantly, you need the right leadership. I always tell people, follow leadership, not money, because ultimately leadership will get you that money that will give you the learnings and the skill set to be able to achieve those things, and the money will come later. But that's the beautiful thing about restaurants. And I think, as this podcast is for people that either are in restaurants and had been stuck as in a shift leader position or an assistant manager position or even a GM position or a district manager position. This is tailored for you. I want, through my learnings, teach you and show you that there's ways of, climbing that quote unquote corporate ladder. So I hope it helps you guys as we do more of these. And I'm going to be sharing a lot of the things that I went through.
I guess what I really wanted to ask was personal experiences dealing with things, going up the ladder. For example, obviously you start off at an entry level position. What do you think was the main challenge for you as you were rising ranks? And what do you think is important for people to focus on as they're going up. I want you to just take a little bit more from personal experience.
Okay, that's 2 questions, right? So the first one was what?
If you could try to add a little bit more of your personal experience over, I guess you would say, things you went through as you were going up the ranks.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think the ultimate thing in restaurant industry is you need to remain flexible. You need to be willing to learn and never, ever, ever say that's not my job. I think it's important that you are always willing to learn new things, because ultimately you might be doing the job of someone else, but those are the opportunities you have to develop yourself. Those are the opportunities people are going to give you to make mistakes. And a lot of people in the restaurant industry, we don't get the right training. We get the keys one day and say, hey, you're the strongest cashier, now you're a shift manager. Or, you're the strongest shift manager, now you're my assistant manager. And I think that helps you in the restaurant industry, because that exposes you indirectly to more responsibility. And ultimately, that's where the knowledge comes from the repetition, from doing things. And a lot of people would blame the lack of maybe some structure or support when people get promoted in the restaurant industry. But that's the beauty of it. Like, there's no other industry like the restaurant industry where with very little training, they'll hand you the reins or the keys of a business that could be doing $1 million to $2, $3, $4 million a year. I think that's when you grab that opportunity and you make it your own. And I think that's kind of what I did. I was given an incredible platform here, and we had one restaurant then, and I did everything. I mean, I was closing shifts. I was, cooking. I was washing dishes. I was doing all of those things, more importantly, because I truly believe that people need to see you do those things so that they can understand that you're with them. It's for your team. But also, you can't lead something you don't understand. You need to be able to do things in order for you to lead a team. That is especially important, especially for those of you that are younger, as you get into the restaurant industry and you're leading some folks that might be a little older than you. I can understand how that could be hard as a young shift manager, young assistant manager, even a young GM. Understand that people are willing to follow you as long as they're willing, as long as they see you have the right intentions, and as soon as they see that you're authentic and that you're willing to support and help when they need you. And I think I did that. I have a story when I used to work at Kookaroo, which no one knows what that is, but Google it. I think it's making a comeback. I started there as a shift manager, and the only reason the job was offered to me was because my friend Santiago didn't want it. I was second choice, but it didn't bother me because I wanted to learn, and I really wanted the experience to be a leader. So there was a gentleman by the name of Melesio. He was a kitchen manager, and I remember my first shift on my own. He just didn't really respect me because he felt that I had more power and authority than him because of the title of a shift manager. And, he felt it was unfair because he clearly worked harder than me, which he did. And he clearly had more information and knew more, which he did. So, what I did is, one time when we were short staffed, I helped in the back. I jumped in the back. I helped them clean up. We left late that night, but, I helped them take out the trash and mop the back of the house and get all that cleaned up. And I think since then, he realized that I was young and there were still things I wanted to learn, but that I wasn't wrong intentioned. And I think a lot of our young leaders want to come in and tell people what to do. Guys, stop. It's, leadership is not about telling people what to do. Leadership is about supporting people on what they're doing. There's some of decisions you're going to have to make, and there's things that you have to lead through. But ultimately, our job as leaders, especially when you're going in and you want to earn people's trust and respect, you can't just be telling, you have to be doing. So that's an important lesson that I learned early on as a shift manager in Kookaroo, and I use that Melesio story all the time, and especially when I'm in groups with young shift managers that I want them to understand what it is to get into a leadership position early on in the restaurant industry.
So I know you touched a little bit about leadership. What are some examples of mistakes that new leaders commit when they start a new managing job?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it a little bit. I think one of them was the fact that they want to just tell people, but the other things are the fact that everybody feels like they need to be liked. I want everyone to like me. I want to make sure that I don't piss anybody off or that I don't upset anyone. And that's the wrong idea. I think, listen, it's nice for people to like you. There's absolutely no doubt. But there's also needs to be clear sense of, hey, we might have been friends before I got promoted into this role, but now I need to make sure that we're all doing our job. You know, my job has changed, and by consequence, I have to make adjustments in my behavior as well. I think it's important for all those young leaders to understand, hey, not everyone's going to like you, but that doesn't mean people don't respect you. And I think you want to make sure that early on, if you have a cashier that used to be your friend and now you have to tell them to go on break, or now you have to tell them to go clean the restrooms, and you know, and they're giving you a hard time, like, well, you're the boss now and you're not cool anymore. You used to be my friend. Have a conversation with them. Sit down with them and say, hey, listen, we're still friends, but when we're here at work, there are new responsibilities that I carry, and I have to make sure that I execute. You know, hey, if you need help, I'll help you clean the restroom. We can do it together. But ultimately, you need to do these things because it's part of our roles, and we have very different roles. And I think the biggest thing is, if you know, when you get promoted, if you want to get promoted, you want people to also support you as you're becoming a leader. So having that conversation with people and saying, hey, I mean no disrespect, or I'm not, you know, trying to get over my head in this position, but I need your support and help as I'm new to leadership and I'm new to this. It's important that people have those conversations, and instead of just things not being addressed. So that's one of the mistakes with new leaders. And I think it's important for people to know people don't need to like you to follow you. People want to follow those folks that are competent in their job, that, you know, as a shift manager, you want to focus on, hey, I want to make sure I run my shifts correctly. And I think when you start running your shifts correctly, you're sending people on break at the right times, you know where to put the, you know, aces in places, you know, who's your strongest person at the kitchen, who's your stronger person here. Yeah. People will respect you so much more because their experience as a team member at that moment is so much smoother, you know, and that's ultimately the respect, where you're going to get the respect. People want to know that you can do your job, that you can lead through it. And also, never be shy on asking for questions. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room to lead. Be honest with yourself and your team and say, hey, I really don't know that. Can you help me? And you'll have a smart ass. They'll tell you, oh, you're supposed to be the manager. You need to know that. Like, you know what? You guys have been here a little longer than me. You guys might know the store a little better than me. You know, for a lot of those new GMs that take over a restaurant and they're placing their first order, there's nothing wrong with asking your seasoned cooks, hey guys, what do we go through on chicken? What do we go through on potatoes? There's nothing wrong with getting your team involved, because I think as you get people involved, they respect you because you're, first of all, being vulnerable and saying, I don't know this stuff as good as you. Second of all, when you get people involved, they'll rally behind you. And if you screw up and you know the order is incorrect, you know, those cooks are going to be with you on the problem solving, because they're like, hey, well, we told them wrong, and I guess, you know, and now we're short potatoes. They're not going to hold you accountable for it because they were part of the process. And the same thing, like if you just want to not listen to them and you don't want to ask for support, and you order a bunch of product that you don't need, guess who's putting it away? The cooks. So every box they have to lift, they're probably internally, you know, telling you this guy doesn't know what the hell they're doing. You know, leadership is about not just, again, telling people what to do, but it's finding ways to get your team involved in the decision-making process. Also showing them that you're capable of doing things, but being vulnerable in the things you don't know and getting them involved.
Do you think personality is something that has to change when you become a leader? Like if someone is more of a serious person, do you think there has to be some sort of change when leading multiple people just because certain personalities are perceived differently? Like if someone comes in really loud and cheerful, they get looked at differently as someone who's more maybe quiet or serious, but they both do their job well. Is there an approach you prefer, or no? Is there a balance you have, or it's just authenticity? What's the advice you'd give to a shift manager?
You need to be yourself. leadership comes in very different forms. It doesn't have to be the outgoing loud guy. For those of you that know me, I'm very loud, and I speak loudly, and I'm every time I walk into a restaurant, I say hi to everyone, and people know that I'm there. But that's just me, and I'm being authentic. I'm like that everywhere I go, whether it's my family or a restaurant. I'm the same person. I think for leadership, you can be a quiet, reserved person and still lead. You don't have to be loud. You don't have to have this outgoing personality. You do have to have conversations. You do have to be okay with sitting down and talking to people. You can't, just not be quiet and silent all the time. There has to be times where you speak up, but it doesn't have to be all the time. So for those of you that maybe are a little more introverts and feel like leadership is about being an extrovert, that is a false statement, and you shouldn't be discouraged. As long as you can be authentic, I think you can lead a group with absolutely no problem.
Okay, what would you say to shift leaders that feel like they are being held down by another shift leader, are stuck on shifts with people that don't take the job as seriously? How would they approach the situation? Do you think it's their job to try to motivate the other shift leaders? How did you approach situations like that with other managers that maybe they were just there for the check?
Yeah, that's probably one of the hardest things, because I think that it's hard to motivate everyone all the time. And I think that as humans, we all have different stages in our lives, and we have different weeks and days where we feel differently. But there are those negative Nancy's. There are people that are always, it doesn't matter what's going on, they will be having a bad day. They will just try to bring you down with them. There's absolutely nothing that could happen. They can win $1 million tomorrow, and they will still be mad about something. They have to pay taxes. I mean, they'll be complaining about the taxes they have to pay.
They don't want to work overtime because they pay more taxes.
Right. So I think that's hard, but I think all leadership levels, you have to address things at every level. Like you have to sit down and talk to people, and you have to escalate things. If for some reason you cannot solve the issue with those people, then you need to bring your GM involved. If district manager, if the district manager is not helping, you need to bring in different levels of leadership to solve the issue. That's hard. And I know for most people, I've heard this phrase a million times, and it makes me sad every time I hear it. But people say, I don't want to lose my job, so I'd rather not bring things up. That doesn't solve anything, and you're just kicking the can down the road. These problems will be there, and they need to be solved. And so you just need to address it. You might lose your job, but here's the deal. If you don't say anything, you're still going to lose your job, because it's going to come to a point where it's going to be, you just don't want to be there anymore. It's going to become such a toxic work environment that you're going to leave anyway. So that same job that you are protecting by staying silent is the same job you're going to lose because it's going to become so toxic. So you have to speak up. You have to address the issues. If there's an individual where they're just toxic and they're making it harder for you and for everyone else to work, you have to address that with the person and then address it later. But it's important that you address it. I think that's the best advice I can give people. And listen, if you go to leadership and they're not doing anything, and you took it all the way up to human resources and even the CEO of the company, because I do encourage my team to come to me if there's any issues and the rest of the management levels haven't addressed it or resolved it, then it might not be the right company. And that's another thing too, is like a lot of times we have to understand that, culture, as much as people say that culture comes from the top, it really doesn't. A lot of the culture might start from the top, but it actually lives with the shift manager that's running the shift, with the GM, with the district manager that might be solving the issues that are being brought up to them or not. So, I think it's important that you identify the culture in the company. And if you're in a toxic culture and you've already tried everything to solve it and brought it up to all the management teams, then it might be time to leave. I always tell people that too.
So let's say you graduated from high school, fresh out, 18 years old. You decide that maybe you want to do school part-time and work as well, but you see yourself more as someone who enjoys working more than going to school. How would you go about for someone to enter a restaurant and, let's say, start as a cashier and then get promoted to a shift leader, and then a shift leader to a general manager, and then a general manager to a DM? Do you think there's a realistic timeline, or do you think that is there goals you should set? Like, I should be a shift leader within a year of me working here, and then how long do you give yourself before you make the next big jump?
I think there's minimums, because I think experience helps when you're doing a job. And not that you need to have all the experience, but you need to have some basic experience. It gives you the best opportunities to succeed in the new role. And I think a lot of the young people that are coming in, they really want to grow quickly, and it's a new generation. And listen, I respect that. I appreciate the hunger of the new generation. You know, as us as an employer or as a company, we need to figure out how we keep those individuals engaged. So that's one of our challenges in this new society. But for people, I would tell them, hey, everyone's different. And I think ultimately what's important is the more time you give yourself in one role to fully understand it and embrace it, the more chances you'll have to succeed at the next level. Because you're kind of setting up that base of the infrastructure in order for you to continue to build on that. And I think that, you know, for me, especially for me to have started in this company with one restaurant, and being able to do the cook job and do the shift manager role and do the district, and then later do the GM role and then the district manager role. And then as we scaled and started opening more restaurants, being exposed to all the things that are required to run a restaurant, to open a restaurant, it helped me build this incredibly strong base. So for me, it's important that people understand that you control your own timing. And if you want to really grow in any company, you have to put in the work, you have to put in the time, you have to make sure that you're not oversimplifying the things that you're doing every day. Because I feel a lot of times shift managers sometimes want to come in and they want to do their job only. And for example, if there's an opportunity for them to help the manager do the PFG order or you know, help the manager with additional responsibilities, the first thing sometimes we say is, that's not my job. And I think that's important for you to learn a new skill set. You have to be flexible in order for you to keep that for your own. I remember when I was an assistant manager at Baja Fresh, I had a general manager that he loved to delegate. He just loved to delegate. Every time he would say, you need to do this and you need to do that. And he had an awesome schedule. He came in at like 10 a.m. and left like at 4. And I was stuck with the worst schedules. And I had to do inventory and I had to do schedules and I had to do everything. And I hated it. And I hated it. I hated him for it at the time. It was crazy because I didn't realize that every time he delegated to me, it was an opportunity for me to do things. And even when I made mistakes, it was helping me learn. I always tell people, like, if someone's delegating stuff to you and, you know, your reaction is, shit, I'm not getting paid for this, that's fine. It's a healthy reaction, but you need to understand that you're learning. Take it. Take the opportunity that someone's giving you to do additional things and just learn from those things, because I think you'll find that when you go to different roles, people might be super protective and they might not want to teach you. So anytime you have an opportunity to go and do something that's outside of your job description, man, own it and learn it and ask questions and say, hey, can I help you with this again? Because it just makes you a better, well-rounded person. So again, back to your question on, you know, when is it the right time to take the next step? It's up to you. It's up to people and how much how quickly they want to do things and how engaged and how committed you are to the role and how much you like it. One advice I do want to give when it comes to the subject of getting promoted and taking the next step, don't take the next step just because it's what's next. Ask, listen, see what that new role looks like, and is it really something that you want to do? Because that's something that I've seen over the years is people just take the next role because that's what's next. You know, I've seen cashiers take shift manager jobs that they don't want. They don't like telling people what to do, and it's not a fit for them. You know, I've seen this all the time. So it's important for everyone to know, it's like, what is the next role that I'm taking? Because, yeah, we all want to make more money. All of us want to make more money, and sometimes we feel like the next step it's the only way to make more money, but it isn't. So take the opportunities that are a good fit for you, because if you take a role that pays you more and it's just what's next and you don't like it, you're going to be so miserable. And and by the way, this is a good advice too for those of you that are in positions to promote people. Don't promote them just because they're the best cashier or the best shift manager. Promote them because you've equipped them and you see that they are embracing the tools you're giving them to be successful at the next role. I always tell the leadership team here in the company is every time you promote someone, you're telling them that they're good enough to do that job. And what's even worse, if they're not, you're inviting them into a new pay bracket, right? Some people are going to make considerably more money, especially when you make the jump from GM to DM or DM to RO or director. Some people may want to go get a mortgage for a home, or some people might go get a new car, or some people might change their lifestyle. And, if 6 months down the road, they're not doing well and you have to demote them or fire them, that's on you because you put them in that role. And there's a responsibility that has to carry every time you're promoting someone as a leader. You can't take that for granted. These are people's lives that you're affecting. And I take that very seriously, and I tell my team to do so too. But it's not just on the way of when is it good for me to take the next job. It's a partnership between your boss as well, and make sure that you're partnering with him to make sure that we're setting people up for success. And the last thing I'm going to say about promoting that is incredibly important for those leaders out there that are promoting people. Your job is not just to train someone and promote them and you're done. You need to be fully responsible and committed to this person as they take the new role, because the training isn't over when you promote someone. You're just getting started. Even if you give them a 4, 5, 6 week training, or even 4 or 5 month training, you still owe it to them to check up on them, to make sure they're doing the job correctly, to make sure they understood everything in training and they can actually put it into practice. As a leader, you're committed to these folks forever because you believe in them and you told them they can do the job, and now it's your responsibility for them to be successful. I think that as leaders, if we take that role and if we take that seriously, we will solve a lot of the issues we have when people take on new roles.
What are some things you'd like to see out of more shift leaders or people that are just getting into management positions? What is something that's a non-negotiable? You have to see this in them. I guess this is advice to the shift leaders on things that they need to work on that are non-negotiable, as well as people that are promoting. What is something that you have to see in someone that you are considering moving up to a management position?
Commitment. Are you committed to the job? And it's simple stuff like, do they show up on time? Do they call off often? And I know it sounds like it's super low level. It's easy. It's a low hanging fruit, but you'll be surprised. And I would say in life, it's about just showing up. It's important just to show up. I always tell people I'm not smarter than anybody here in this company. And I don't consider myself smarter than anyone, honestly. But I just show up. I love what I do. I have a passion for it, and I'm always here. I'm always present. That's what I want from people. It's just, are you here? Can I work with you? Can I develop you? Can I teach you? And I can't do any of those things if you're not here and if you're not present. That's the most basic one, because as I said earlier, it's not about personality. It's not about outgoing or no. It's leadership comes in many forms, but you can't lead if you're absent. So that's an important attribute.
Do you notice anything in the new generation with their attitudes, something that they need to fix besides the fact that they just want to come in and start delegating and telling people what to do? Is there something else that you think is important besides just the showing up aspect?
Yeah, listen, I've always had a hard time with this one, but I think as I'm getting older, I kind of want to embrace it more. It's the humility piece. You want to be humble when you lead. And I know a lot of times that can be in fights against confidence, and confidence is also important. But I think they can both coexist. I think as I was younger, I think I was more sold on I need to be confident on what I'm doing, and now it's more about I need to be humble about what I'm doing. But I think you can do both. and they can both coexist. And I think sometimes we feel like with younger generations that they're a little bit overconfident, but there's nothing wrong with that. I think you just need to channel that and let them do their thing, and then stay close enough to, if they make a mistake, you can guide them through it, and hopefully they're self-aware to see it as well. Yeah, I mean, confidence, and it's important.
This is just my 2 cents, but I actually see the opposite. I feel like they're not as confident, especially when there's a stronger manager around. They don't really use their voice. It's more so just send them on breaks. We have to encourage people to use their voice a lot more, just because sometimes I feel like they downplay the role of shift lead. And I don't know if that's because there's a strong manager around, so they feel like they don't have to be as alert. But I feel like that's most people that get promoted into a leadership management position, they have trouble calling people out and voicing their opinion for the most part. That's just what I have noticed. I don't know if I have to coach, or if they need confidence coached in them, or if that's something that they just build over time as they adjust into the role. I don't know if you have any advice for a general manager or a trainer dealing with shift leaders that lack confidence. Is there something you could do to instill some more? How do you let them know that they are essentially running the restaurant because they're there more than anyone?
Well, first of all, confidence comes from doing your job well. And confidence comes from having some success. So I think as a manager, as a district manager, anyone that's in a position to promote, and I said this earlier, your job is, you need to be committed to this individual. And the confidence is going to come from that success that they start gaining. And the success comes from just doing the tasks, surrounding them with tools that help them do their job. So let's go back to the shift leader. If they do a walkthrough, which we have, and they are thorough, and they'll have a successful shift. They're not going to run out of CO2. They're not going to run out of ice. They're going to have less hiccups in the shift, and they have more chances of being successful. That's why all these tools exist. The walkthroughs and the temperature test, and for district managers, their own checklist that they have when they go to the restaurants. All of these are built as a checklist, which, by the way, I have a love and hate relationship with, and in another podcast, we'll talk about that. But every checklist needs to have a behavior that comes from it. In other words, if I'm going through it, is it going to trigger a behavior that's going to solve the issue? So when you're a new shift leader and you equip them with these checklists, when you equip them with these tools, it gives them a better chance of running a better shift. And I think with that comes confidence. And I think with that, you're building on this young leader's toolbox. It's difficult for them to be confident right off the bat. And I think, again, that's why you have to be committed to the process after the promotion. It's not just, I promoted you, go be great. It's, I'm here, I'll be supporting you. If you need anything, get stuck, I'm here as a safety net. That is an essential piece. Because I've seen it before. We promote people incredibly quickly. When they start failing, I would say that the vast majority of people that fail in the new position is because the leader was not committed enough to their growth and their development.
Okay. With that being said, what's your approach to employee retention in an industry with high turnover?
It's culture. It's all about culture. And I said it earlier, everyone says that culture comes from the top. Well, it might come from the top, but it doesn't survive because the top believes in it. A CEO can have its own culture and values, which we do. But ultimately, if the GM and the district managers and the shift leaders are not living those values and that culture, then it's going to die. As a leader, our responsibility is to give people the tools and the support so that they can live that culture. But ultimately, the field, the team in the field, the DMs, the GMs, the shift leaders need to live that culture. I'll use an example. We allow team members to shut down DoorDash or Uber Eats if they're overwhelmed or short-staffed. That comes from the top. That was a decision I made so that we can protect the team member experience. It's still sad to see that a lot of our restaurants don't allow our shift leaders to do that. Or like the GM won't say, well, no, don't do that, because then when I'm going to be asked why it happened. Or the district manager won't give the authorization because they don't want to answer the question of, well, why was the team overwhelmed? I think that's what's difficult about culture, is that it can be written somewhere and it sounds amazing and you put them in posters and you put them on business cards and you hand them out to people and you say, this is what our culture and this is what we stand for. But ultimately, the reality of it is culture is really what your team members are going through every day. Culture is what is the team member experience? Are they really seeing the culture alive in the restaurants? Are they getting the support that we claim we give? You know, are we as genuine? And so, you know, I was hearing a podcast the other day of this gentleman that's on retail. He's got a lot of retail stores, and you know, he was talking about how he sees his team members as family. And I have a big problem with that because I always tell people, family you abuse, right?
What?
Family you abuse. Family, it's always attached to you. Family will love you regardless of what you do. Like, it's family. You forgive, right? I don't think as a team member or as an employee, you should put people through that. I think that there shouldn't be blind loyalty when it comes to a team member to a company. I think that as a company, you have to earn that loyalty every day. And you have to make sure that the team member is also a priority to you. I don't like the family term because it puts the team member in a disadvantage. Because, listen, for family, you do everything. You sacrifice. You do so many things. I don't think that you, as a company, you need to put your team members in the position of supporting the company blindly. I think that there needs to be a balance when it comes to that. I think that as a team member, there needs to be a balance of what we ask from them, and they need to get from us what we get from them. There needs to be a healthy, balanced relationship between a company and a team member. And I think in families there isn't a balance sometimes. You know, you ask for more sometimes from, you know, the one of the kids, and that you don't ask from the other, or the kids ask a lot from the parents, and you know, there isn't really that balance because it's family. And I think for the team member, that doesn't apply. I think, again, there needs to be a healthy balance between what we're asking our team to do. They need to get paid correctly. They need to get treated correctly. And again, I think for a lot of families, the balance doesn't exist.
I feel like there's a lot of things that go on in a restaurant, and as a single manager, you're not able to be there at all hours of the day. There's a night shift and there's a morning shift. So what is your advice, or I guess you could say, how do you stay connected to your restaurant? And how do you just know what people are thinking? How do you find out what's going on? What advice would you give to managers that are just starting out? Well, first of all, do you think they have to know everything that is going on?
No. This whole thing about leadership and you have to know everything is false. Like, you can't know everything. You have to rely on your people.
Can you try?
No. You have to, listen, you have to stay connected to a certain degree, but you can't know everything. You can't. I mean, you won't have a life. And that's the problem with the restaurant industry, by the way, is that people think that you have to be working 70 hours a week or 60 hours a week. And that's false. You can have a very successful restaurant and working 40 to 45, 50 hours a week. This whole thing of you have to live there, you have to wake up there, and you can't trust your team because they're always stealing from you. All of that is bullshit. You have to trust your team. You hire them, you train them, you put systems in place so that you control, a little bit of the theft if there's some, and systems in place of inventory so you know what your cost is, and you can find if there's leaks or people are taking chicken home or whatever the case may be. You have systems in place, but you have to trust people. You can't build a business without it. You can't, and you can't build systems that are going to tell you everything. That's the reality of it. Now, you control the team around you. You control the shift leader you promote. You control the GM you have in the restaurant. You control the district manager that runs your district. So you just need to make sure you have the right people around you. That's it. But no, as a business owner or as a GM of a restaurant, you can't. I remember one time a GM asked me, because we have cameras in all the stores, and we don't use the cameras to monitor people. We use the cameras when there's an accident, they're more follow-up more than, monitoring people. We don't do that. That's not part of our culture. But I had a general manager once say, George, if you give me access to the cameras, I can catch my team and everything they do wrong. It's like, how do you live like that? How do you sleep, with the notion of I need to be monitoring my team at all times because I know that they're doing something wrong. You have to believe in people. You have to trust. And you, by the way, you have to give them the systems so that you can trust, and you have to be able to verify and stay connected enough to where you know how your restaurant's running, but you can't be there all the time. And as a GM, you have to rely on your shift leaders. And here's the other thing too that I love is if you build a good team and a good culture, people will call you when they get stuck. And that is an incredible opportunity for you, number one, to know what's wrong, and number two, to coach and to develop, right? Because I think a lot of times as GMs, your team calls you, or as a DM, your GM call you, and you're like, man, I'm trying to have dinner with my family and this guy's calling me. It's an incredible opportunity for development. And I would always say, don't shut that down.
Yep.
If your team's calling you, it's so hard, because it's so hard to call your boss. No one wants to call their boss. No one. So for you to get over the fact that you're calling your boss, which is hard. And by the way, what's the first thing people say when you answer the phone? I'm sorry to bug you.
Yep.
I'm sorry to bother you. But I always tell people, you're not bugging me and you're not bothering me. This is literally my job. I get paid handsomely to answer these calls. How can I help? How can I support you? If anything, in my level, I get less and less calls, and that's my frustration now, is that I don't get those calls, and I'm deprived from the ability to coach and develop people, because that people tend to not use me as a resource for the same reason, because when you're a CEO, that title just carries more for people than for you, and it almost makes you untouchable. No one wants to call the CEO, because if you're calling the CEO, that means that, someone's in deep shit. So I would say for a lot of people, make sure you take those calls. They're perfect development and training calls and coaching calls. And by the way, if you take that call and you coach that person and you help them get the answer, or walk them through getting the answer to the solution for the problem, those calls are going to become less and less. Because you're taking the time to develop them. You're taking the time to coach them. You're taking the time to work through the problem with them so they can come up with a solution. The next time the same thing happens, they know how to fix it. They're not going to call you anymore. So you want to develop people, you want to coach people, don't always answer your phone. I guess that's the way to stay connected.
Yeah, because there's people out there that say, it's my day off, don't call me. Or it's just so hard to get a text through or to call them. And I feel like your team looks at you differently when they need help and you don't answer their phone call.
100%.
So
you talk about, people wanting to follow you. They want to follow someone that's going to answer the phone. I mean, because they want the answers, to feel supported. And listen, there's no excuse anymore to not be available.
You're always on your phone. Your phone's always on you.
100%. I have no social media. I have none. Well, LinkedIn. I think that one counts as social media. Right. But I don't have Instagram. I don't have Facebook. Is Facebook still around?
No.
Okay. It is around. TikTok. I don't have TikTok either. And one of the reasons I don't have it is because I love staying connected on my emails, my work. That's my phone time. Because it's still toxic, by the way. Even, being on the phone when you're at dinner, that's still not a good behavior. But my whole point with this is technology has allowed us to be connected in such a way that we never had that before. Mm-hmm. How you use that connectivity is what makes the difference, right? It's like if you're going to be using technology to, be watching endless TikTok videos about cats.
Okay. Whatever.
No offense to Selena and Dino, but if you're going to be talking, instead you can use it to be connected with your team. And but again, you do need healthy boundaries. And I do want to say this and make sure everyone takes note of this, because this was important to me too. When you set up boundaries, it's healthier for you when you go back to work. So for those people that say, hey, it's my day off, don't call me, I would just make a slight adjustment to that. I would say, hey, tomorrow's my day off. Is there anything you need from me today? Because I really want to disconnect tomorrow. But if there's something you really need, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You do two things. You tell people, hey, I'm going to be gone tomorrow. If you need something, to ask me now, and you can avoid a phone call. And you also tell them, hey, but if you need something urgent, still reach out to me. One of my favorite quotes that I tell my team is, hey, I'm going to be gone these days, but if you need something urgent, don't let me slow you down or slow down your team. come and get the answer from me if you need it, even if I'm gone. Because ultimately, as leaders, we are responsible for our team not to get stuck. But you do need to have boundaries. You do need to take days off. You do need, there's a healthy way to do that. And as a leader, by the way, I think the calls, honestly, that bothered me the most were not when my team called me, but it was when my bosses called me on my days off, because they know I'm off. And especially with stuff that could have waited for me to come back that was not urgent. I want to actually tell people that more. As a leader, you have the responsibility to protect your team's time. And when they're off, they're off. If it's urgent, call them. But, if you're calling them and say, hey, I'm looking at the inventory and it looks like we're missing 2 boxes of chicken, and you can ask them that same question tomorrow. Like, don't call them, especially if they close the night before. Don't call them at 7:30 or 8 a.m. with the question about, hey, I'm missing 2 cases of chicken. We have to protect our team's time. We need healthy boundaries. And the restaurant industry has this negative reputation of there's no boundaries and you have to work 100 hours. We have the responsibility as the new generation of restaurant leaders to stop that. And I think you can. And it's super healthy. So again, don't let the healthy boundary of being off not be there for your team if they really need you. But there needs to be a healthy boundary. And by the way, if you're a general manager or a district manager and you're going to take off a couple of days, make sure your team's set up for success, and then no one's going to call you. If they have enough staffing, if they have enough product, if they have all the direction they need, they are not going to call you. But your responsibility is to set them up. It's really a slippery slope when it comes, especially with district managers, because I think they do get a lot of calls, but I do think that a lot of those calls can dissipate and eventually disappear if they take the time to develop their team. When you're in store visits, are you developing your shift leaders to have those, critical thinking skills to solve the issues that will arise in a shift? If you're just going to a store visit, you're doing a checklist and you're not going to spending time with your shift manager, you're going to get those calls from the shift manager because you're not developing them. You want less calls in the restaurant industry? Hire the right team, develop them, train them, be there when they need you, and fire the bad ones. Fire the bad ones. I cannot stress that enough. If you gave them the tools, if you gave them the support, and they still don't get it, it's time to move on.
Taking a step back about what we were talking about a couple of minutes ago, have you struggled with micromanaging in the past, and when did you realize?
I became a micromanager by default because I was new in my role, and to your earlier question, I wanted to know everything. And I didn't want to fail, and I didn't want my team to fail. So I became a micromanager because that was the best way where I can know everything and help everyone and be aware of everything. Now in this role, I realized that you can't do that anymore. You have to let people make decisions. You have to support their decisions. You have to take a step back. I'm a recovery micromanager. I still sometimes do it, I don't do it with my team that has proven to me that they can be on their own. I do it specifically when I see someone struggling. If I see that they're having a hard time, and my job is to make sure they don't fail. And I'm going to ask questions, and I'm going to be present, and I'm going to walk into their meetings. I'm going to do things like that because I don't want them to fail. It's not that there's a need for me to have the control. It's more the need of making sure that person doesn't fail. So again, micromanaging is bad. I would always say that, and it's true, but we do need to find that balance, and I need to find that balance when it comes to struggling team members and how do you support them and help them. It's like we can have a podcast about micromanaging, honestly.
I feel like as someone I'm just speaking for younger people. Once you're in a management position, I feel like you need to gain experience. I feel like not knowing everything kind of hurts you as a younger manager. So you always have to be aware of what's going on in your restaurant. I feel like that's what the people that have been mentoring me have taught me, but that's just their personality. I feel like every chance every time you walk around the restaurant, it's a chance for you to see what's going on, hear what people are talking about. That way you get to know which one of your team members like to talk a little bit more, who is going to the back and taking breaks, not doing anything, because ultimately all of that affects your team. Because if there's one person that walks to the back and just kind of is walking around, not doing anything, the other two people on the line are going to complain. And I just feel like it's very easy for those things to get out of hand, especially if you're a newer manager coming into a situation where you don't know the store. And then I also go back to the point of letting your shift managers know they have a voice, because when you're not there during some night shifts, you're not going to know everything that's going on, and you're relying on them to report all this stuff back to you. So I feel like in some instances you do have to know everything that's going on. I feel like if you're a more experienced manager who's done this for a couple of years, you kind of already know what to expect, I would say.
I've seen people, district managers that are incredibly talented, and they walk into a restaurant and they can find the issues within a 2-hour visit. Because ultimately, people talk if you're willing to listen. And I think that's, as a leader, that is your best tool. Just listen. Just see the behavior and listen to what people are saying. And you don't have to be there every day to know that there might be an issue with the cook. There's a cook that doesn't talk to the rest of the cooks and he's isolated. There's an issue there. Again, there needs to be boundaries. Micromanaging is not good. And knowing everything in your restaurant is impossible if you want to have a healthy balance with work and life, which I advise everyone to have. I worked a lot in my early days. I worked 60, 70-hour weeks, 7 days a week, but we were building a business, right? It was required to do. At this point in my life, I'm working 5 days a week, probably working about 45, 50 hours a week if I'm checking emails, and maybe some weeks where I'm traveling. But there needs to be a healthy balance, and you need to trust your team. Even if you're a new GM, as you're mentioning.
Yeah, but what if you're getting thrown into a new store? You have to, that's going to take time. You're not just going to do it with the 40 hours you get a week.
You should do it with 45. How are you going to know if a team member is good or not good if you're always going to be on them? People behave differently when leadership's present or not. Do you agree?
That's true.
Okay. So if you want to catch the good guys and the bad guys, the only way to know if they're good or bad is leaving them alone. And that's the reality of it. Because if you're present all the time, you're going to know those guys that already know, okay, when my boss is around, I need to do all this stuff. And you're not going to be able to know the difference. There needs to be healthy boundaries. And there's ways and there's tools, which I think we have in the restaurant, that will allow you to do that. Now, if there's a week where you have to work an extra day because something happens, use that as an opportunity to learn your team. Can you make some closing shifts with the opening shifts so you get to know your team both night and day? Absolutely. As a new GM, do you want to do that? Absolutely. There's things you can do within that 45-hour, 50-hour work week that can allow you to have enough presence in the restaurant to get to know your team. Idea that you have to know everything and you have to be there all the time, that is exactly why people get burned out. And that is exactly why people hate the restaurant industry. I want to use this podcast not only to teach some people some of the things I've learned, and hopefully you don't make the same mistakes I did over the last, I've been in the restaurant industry since I was 17, 16 years old. I'm 44 now. So that's a long time in restaurants. I want to be able to teach that to you guys and for you guys to learn from that. And then obviously, hopefully this helps, because my mentality has shifted and changed. That's one of the things I sometimes get a hard time from my team, saying, you change your mind all the time. I'm like, well, if the time's changed, why can my thinking evolve with what's happening around me? Why do I need to be stuck with an idea that I said, a year ago, or even sometimes 3 weeks ago? Leadership is about pivoting. It's about changing your mind. It's about and bringing your team along in the process. So you don't have to know everything, and you don't have to be there all the time. There's ways of doing it. Now, are there going to be some mistakes? Yeah. Someone's gonna, do a big void or piss off a customer or, upset one of the team members. Absolutely. But if you don't allow those moments to happen, then how do you coach people? People need to make mistakes. They have to, and you need to be okay with that. Perfection only comes after you've learned how not to make mistakes, and you only learn how not to make mistakes by making mistakes. That's the bottom line. I loved this company I'm in because it has allowed me. It's been an incredible platform for me, and it has allowed me to make some pretty stupid mistakes that it's taught me so much. So anyway, I think that it's a reaction or a reflex as a person that's taking on a new role to be nervous and making sure that everything's going perfectly. But I would also argue that you have to give your team a little bit of space in order for them to make those mistakes that you can use as coachable and teachable moments to make them better.
Okay. No, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. What if you want to do that? What if you want to be invested? Like if someone's starting up a business, you don't think it's a good idea to just be there 100%? Maybe not micromanage and have to know everything that's going on, but is there something wrong with what else is there to do? As a business owner, wouldn't you want to be there all day? Or maybe is that just toxic old school mentality back in the day?
Every time I go to a restaurant, as much as I want people to feel okay around me, they don't. And as a CEO and an investor in the company, people are never going to be themselves around you. It takes a lot of time. So, yeah, if you're opening one restaurant and you're the owner and you're going to be there for like 45, 50 hours a week, yeah, people will eventually get used to you. But it's not healthy to want to be there all the time. It's not healthy. You need to delegate.
Is there something you would do differently so that people don't act differently, or is that just what comes with going up the ladder?
You can't control what people feel about you for the most part. Outside of being yourself and being authentic, people will make judgment of who you are and how you are, in 40 minutes or an hour that they see you. Or if you're there all the time, I think you're not letting people get developed. You need to give people space. You need to trust, but you need to verify, and you need to have systems in place to do that.
Well, this is just a bunch of advice. What would you tell someone who is young in a leadership position? Well, not shift lead anymore. Let's say like a general manager or district manager, someone that's relatively young. Do you see any challenges with that? Let's talk about the challenges when you're higher up the ladder, like a DM. Is there any advice you'd give to young DMs that have little to no experience in that field? And is it actually a rare occurrence to have someone that's younger be a district manager?
No, no. We have a few DMs that are pretty young in our system, and they were good GMs, and they have a solid base because they know how to run a restaurant. Their biggest learning is, how do I do that for 5 stores, and how do I delegate, and how do I figure out where I fit, allowing my GMs to run their own stores. Because one of the first mistakes they do is they want to be the super GM and run 4 or 5 restaurants, right? They want to solve all the issues, they want to do all the things, and they start taking authority away from the general managers, and then people are calling them for everything. So the advice I give them is, rely on your GMs, work through your people. You can't do everything when you have 4 or 5 restaurants. If you're a young district manager, make sure you're working through your people. You're letting them make decisions, partnering with you, so that you know what's going on in the restaurant. But ultimately, you cannot be the one sitting down with the team member, having a conversation about attendance. Your GM has to be present. If you show up to the store and your GM's not there and the team is coming to you with concerns, the first question you need to tell them is, did you address that with your GM?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, then you say, well, I would like to give him the opportunity to solve that issue for you. And then as a DM, then you call the GM the next day and say, hey, I was there yesterday and such told me that there was an issue with this. He hasn't told you about it. Can you address it with him? And then you ask the GM, do you feel comfortable addressing it? Do we need to walk and talk through the conversation so that I can help you? Or do you got it, right? And some GMs will say, well, I'll feel better if you sit down with both of us and have the conversation. Then as a DM, do it. But you cannot be driving the conversation fully. Your GM has to be involved. The worst thing you can do as a leader is take authority away from your GMs. Don't do that. That's not fair to them. Now, again, it might require some hand-holding where you're having these conversations with the GM, but don't take authority away from them. So as a new DM, work through your people and make sure that you're asking questions when you're in the restaurants. But don't make the number one mistake of you're the one making changes on the schedule. Don't do that. And if a team member comes to you and says, well, my GM told me that you're the one that does the schedule, make sure you correct that right away. And for those GMs out there that think that by just saying that everything is the DM's fault or that it came from corporate and that's why you have to do it, you're also delegating authority and you're taking authority away from yourself. Own it. Even if it's a corporate initiative or a DM initiative or an RO initiative, you need to own it. It's your store. Right? And if you don't believe in it, you have to bring it up to your DM and RO. But it's important that you don't delegate authority at every level. You need to own it. Your team needs to know if you're the general manager of this restaurant, they need to know that you have the authority to build that schedule, that you have the authority to promote them or fire them, right? You can't delegate authority. You need to own your store, your team. It needs to be yours. That's important in leadership. And at that district manager level, that's the same relationship you have with your GMs. But when you go into restaurants, they need to know that you're there to support, but you're not there to take over. Those are two very different things.
Obviously, you're managing 5 or more stores, or you're just running multiple stores at this point. Can you manage them all the same way, or is there, let's say you have 2 stores that are struggling, 3 that are doing, and 2 that are doing okay, and 1 that's doing great? Is it the same approach for every store? Do you approach it the same way, or is there?
There's two approaches to that. You need to be consistent the same way, because a lot of times people say, well, that's my trouble store, I'm going to go spend more time over there. Okay, that makes sense kind of on paper, but the reality of it is, what if you have this great performing GM that because they're a great performer, you're not spending any time with them on making them even better? You need to have a standard amount of visits through all your restaurants. Now, where you're having issues, your visit should be different, right? You should be addressing the issues that are happening. So I believe in spending equal amount of time within your restaurants, whether they're performing or not performing. You need to spend time in all of them, pretty much evenly. And with the one that's performing, you keep developing them, you keep coaching them, you keep them engaged. And when the one that's not performing, you help them. You figure out why they're struggling. What are the obstacles around them that is preventing them from, reaching the level of the performing restaurant? But this whole notion of the problem child gets the attention, that's old school. And you can't do that. You can't cheat your top performing team from development just because you have a problem child. You can't do that. You got to treat them both equally. It's like literally having a kid. You got to treat them both equally. You got to give them both the same time, the same attention. You have to. How
do you approach a visit at a store that's low performing while also not taking authority away from the GM?
You work through your GM. If you go into the restaurant and you see that for example, if you see that you're short-staffed and you go look at the schedule and it's written wrong, so you need to help that GM with writing the right schedule, right?
Yeah.
You walk into a store and you see that the cooks suck, right? You need to go into the store and say to the GM, hey, these guys are not doing their job correctly. What do you think that is? Have the dialogue with the GM so that he can tell you what he thinks the problem is.
Can you ask the cooks?
Not before you
yet.
Do all that. Not yet. Okay. No, because then you're taking authority. You're solving the problem. You need to address everything through the GM. Why do you think this is happening? What do you think this is happening? You have your own observations, but you can't take that authority away from the GM. Now, if you give the GM the tools to solve the issues, right? If you told the GM fix the schedule and they don't do it, the problem's the GM, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, you have to, but you need to, that's the fastest way to know whether the GM is part of the solution or part of the problem. And I can tell you that a lot of times, leadership is the issue. Whether it's a district or a store, leadership is the issue. But you can't take over. You have to work through that GM. Other issue, cashier's not smiling. Well, you go to the GM and say, who hired that cashier? Well, I did. Maybe you need to sit down, and the next time they have interviews, you need to sit down with them to make sure they're asking the right questions, to make sure they're bringing the right candidate in. As a district manager, you can't just go and solve the problem. You have to go see the root cause. And a lot of times the root cause is the GM. If you help the GM, if you guide the GM, if you develop the GM, you're going to see better results. But if you're going to just solve the problem for them, they're never going to learn. They're never going to get better. The next time they hire a cashier, it's going to be the same problem. Well, I do want to say that, the purpose of this podcast is to make sure that, it's help, right? This is not advice that is, bulletproof. This is just advice that I've been through. It's my experiences. It's what I feel. It's what I've seen. So, this is a disclaimer that no company should be, these are my own thoughts, Jorge Luis Ortiz Garcia's thoughts and ideas, and it excludes any opinion of any company that's associated with me currently. So I want to make sure people know that. But I also want to say this podcast is to try to keep a connection with the team. As I've continued to grow in my role, I've realized that there's been a detachment from the field, from the team, which ultimately is the one that makes the magic happen. So this podcast is just to put this information out there in a way for you guys to listen to my experiences and to guide you through some of the issues you might be seeing. So it's not perfect, as you guys might have noticed, and it won't be because this is not what we do for a living. But I did feel the need and the urge to get more information out there to you guys, and hopefully it helps. And we'll have a email where you can email things if you want me to talk about certain things. There will be an email there where you can email directly and drive this podcast to where you need the help, because ultimately that's what this is, right? It's I want to help, and I want to get this message out there. So that's the reason why we're doing this podcast. It's not going to be pretty and have special sound effects. We may have some interesting guests as we keep moving forward. But this time, my son Jorge was here, and it's awesome to have these talking points with him as he's grown in the restaurant industry as well. And so it was really cool to see. And then, my other son Luis is producing it too, which is really awesome to see. As communication is his major, and this is really cool to be able to share with both of them. So it's just a small little production here. So I want to make sure that I told you guys the why. Yeah, no, thanks guys. Thank you, Luis, for being here and producing all this stuff. Jorge, I really love your questions and the insights, and hopefully this was good for all of us. All right, bye guys. Peace out.
Thanks for tapping into The Next Shift, Moving Up in the Restaurant Industry, hosted by Jorge Luis Ortiz Garcia. If you're about that restaurant life or love a good underdog story, make sure to follow, share, and stay tuned. Until next time.